Well, I was gonna say on 16 of '09, I had an auto accident.
It was a Sunday morning. I was sound asleep. It was 5:15. And I got a phone call, and she wanted to know if I knew a Patrick McLaughlin. I said, yeah, it's my son. And she said, well, you need to come to Allegheny Hospital now.
He went out, drank a lot, and decided to drive home. And he was driving home on 79, and he either passed out or lost control of the car or something. And the car spun a few times, hit another car, spun it around, and then he slammed into a concrete wall. But he decided not to wear his seatbelt, so he went through the passenger side window.
He'd already been through emergency, and they'd taken him up to trauma. I think there's a picture that you'll see that shows what he looked like when we went into trauma. He had wires and tubes and things coming out of every part of his body, and the left side of his face was the side that was most damaged. It was black already from black and blue, and his left eye was all puffed up, and you couldn't see the eye at all. And so that's how we found him. He was completely and totally non-responsive. When we asked what his condition was, they said he was critical and he was posturing. And I'm like, what the heck does that mean? And that was just the beginning of the fact that we are not medically inclined at all and had no idea what was going to happen and what we had gotten into.
I got a call from my grandmother, and she's like, your dad's been in an accident. I think it's best if you stay with your mom for a little bit. And so the thing about this, I didn't realize the severity of it.
So over the next week, he had plenty of holes that he had put in himself, but they wanted to put in more. They wanted to drill into his skull and put a pressure gauge in, and you'll see it's right here, and it's wrapped in white tape, and they call it the unicorn horn, and that's the pressure gauge. And then they put in a trach so they could get him off the respirator, and then eventually they put in a feeding tube, and he was still getting all kinds of other meds and antibiotics and everything. And basically he was in trauma for 5 weeks, which is an incredibly long time. Most people are in and out in less than 4 or 5 days, and he was there for 5 weeks. They tried to move him to a step-down unit, but he crashed and they had to bring him back to trauma. Just so you know, by the time he was done at Allegheny General, the bill was just about $1 million.
A lot has changed over the last years. When all this happened, I was just like speaking a whole bunch of gibberish, where the main thing I said was, I can help, who's next, which is from owning the pizza shop before. Things have definitely changed. I'm at Remed, a place in Shadyside for brain injury, someone who has a brain injury, where it helps you get your cognitive back and more your socialization and that kind of stuff. I currently live by myself, and for whatever reason I've driven both my mom and my daughter from there, which I deeply regret.
One thing I would say to anyone my age: I feel like in our generation, a lot of us think we're infallible. We drive too fast. We look at our phones when we drive. I feel like we're a little too risky with our lives, and I feel like a lot of that goes into stereotypes and peer pressure and what's expected of us and what we're supposed to be doing and what we're actually doing and things along those lines. I feel like my father, when this happened, was in his late 30s. If not for you, like, if you don't care that much about your lives, think of your parents. Because that's exactly what happened with my grandmother and my father. He went out, drank, drove. She had just retired. She's lost her retirement so far. Like, she's getting it when I go to college. That's her retirement. Just don't do it, you know? I say that, and I know it's so easy, and I know so many people our age are doing it. And I haven't heard terribly much of people drinking and driving, thank God, from our school. But I do know that it probably does happen more than I hear about it. I do know people are at least drinking. I hope they're not driving. But it's one thing to ruin your life. It's another thing to make a decision and have the chance to ruin your life, someone else's life, your parents' life.
So I definitely would think for you guys, if you are drinking somewhere, give your keys up before you drink. And please call your parents, because your parents might be mad that you're calling them at midnight or 1 to come get them. But the bottom line is, in the long run, they should be happy that they called you to get them instead of driving. So hopefully you don't wind up like me or worse.
You're 18 and you have everything possible out there ready for you. And in 2 months, or a month, from whenever this is, 3 months, you're, going to be changing your life totally. And there is no rational reason to make this a part of your life.